Hello, viewers. The team at mudpuppy.com has been absolutely inundated with questions about manual sports cars. It's amazing how many people frequently ask, what manual sports cars are still available and which ones would you get? Um, that's a lie. No one asked that, and there's no we. It's just me. There actually is no mudpuppy.com. That was a Top Gear joke for any of you guys that watch Top Gear or Grand Tour. Anyways, this video is mostly about cars, but also we're going to try Brick Lake Saturday morning. So if you're interested in riding to Brick Lake and you have a built Honda, preferably, or at least a four-wheeler that's snorkeled and is reliable and can make it there, we're going to leave North Beach at 9 a.m. Saturday morning to try to make it to Brick Lake. And the reason a reliable four-wheeler is important is because if you break down the field of misery, the only way to get it out is a helicopter. We can try all day long. We'll probably have to get parts and come back and fix it out there and drive it out because you can't really tow anything through there. We've tried. Anyways, so this is a list of all the cars in the United States you can buy that are manual and rear-wheel drive. Maybe there's a couple I missed. There used to be a Genesis G70, but the manual was just dropped, and it was not a great car anyways. You only can manual the four-cylinder. So this is all the ones I'm aware of. If I'm missing any, please comment below and I'll add them. And then I went over here and I took the ones that I was interested in that the specs are available and did a spec comparison. The M2 is 2023, so there's no specs on that yet. BMW killed off the manual in the M240i, which makes me very sad because I love that motor. And the GR Supra on here is getting a manual next year as well. Unfortunately, there's no one's driven it yet, so I don't have any specs. The regular automatic Supra is obviously extremely fast and competitive, but I'm not buying another automatic car because manuals are dying, so you might as well enjoy them while they're here. And gasoline cars are actually also dying, so you might as well enjoy those too. So that's why I'm buying another sports car. So here's my comparison. This is mostly information from Car and Driver. They're the most reliable. You've probably seen these videos before if you watch my car videos, which no one does, and I don't really blame you because this isn't a car channel. So I'm going to go through it a little bit. 0 to 60 minus rollout, that means Car and Driver 0 to 60 time. This is true 0 to 60, so you should probably put that in here. Like a true 0 to 60 miles per hour from a dead stop, no 1 foot rollout. 5 to 60, it's an important metric that shows you how good the car is if you don't brake boost it. You're cruising at 5 miles per hour and you stand on the throttle. So it takes into account the time the motor takes to rev and build boost, etc. Quarter mile time, obviously the true benchmark here, because that is a high enough top speed to take into account all your gear ratios, your aerodynamics, and everything like that, whereas 0 to 60 is a lot more traction dependent. And on day-to-day driving, traction is a crapshoot. So traction is a little bit taken out of these times, and it's a little more about power and everything. And then MSRP, it's obviously important. I should probably put some conditional formatting on that because price does tend to matter. Okay, I did that backwards. There we go. All right, so the M3. This would be the M3 manual, so not the M3 competition. So that's why the times are a little slower here. My buddy actually has this car, and it was tested in a few videos, and we never got down to 4.2. I think the best we got was around 4.5, true 0 to 60. So we got some time to improve there. It's a pretty tricky car to launch. It's just got so much boost and power that it likes to spin the wheels, so it's tricky. And its launch control gets you about 4.6, so its launch control isn't amazing, but no manual launch control is. So I got some experience with this car. Haven't done any quarter mile pulls with it yet, so I have to trust Car and Driver there. Very expensive, but it's got 5 comfortable seats. It's got air conditioned seats, extremely comfortable seats, quiet, refined interior, a lot of passenger volume. If you look at this list, it has the most passenger volume. It's huge inside. It's very nice. It is pretty wide. Awesome performance on the skid pad. Horsepower per dollar, not super great. It's an expensive car. Yeah, so that's probably the best car on this list if you're not worried about price. As far as all-around practicality and performance, the M3, you just can't really mess with it. The next was a CT4 Blackwing, which is Cadillac's competition to the M3. You see the times are pretty similar. It is cheaper, a little heavier, still very comfortable. Not quite as efficient. Same power pretty much. It has a little better braking performance. But yeah, overall pretty similar car. This is a twin turbo straight six. This is a twin turbo V6. But again, pretty expensive, but still cool. I just don't really like V6 motors and turbo lag. I'm not a fan of that. GR86, that's the new Toyota 2022. 2022's got a lot of improvements on it. Did another video on that. We test drove an automatic. I'd love to get a manual to play with. As you can see, it's the only thing it's pretty slow. The only thing slower on this list is a Miata. But it is very cheap, almost as cheap as a Miata, and it does have really good skid pad performance. 0.98. It's pretty great for a cheap car. But the interior is very crappy. It's a cheap car. It's got a cheap interior. So if you're going to have a car with a cheap, crappy interior that's outdated, you might as well just have a Camaro. The Z, this just came out. It's pretty attractive to me, except that it doesn't have any back seats, and the front seats don't recline very far. Didn't perform that well in the skid pad. Its performance numbers aren't that great compared to the other ones. Horsepower dollar is pretty good. It does look amazing. It's going to take a while to get one because there's like a waiting list and there's a big cult following on these things. And again, it's a V6, and I just don't like how V6s feel. Camaro LT1s, this is like the budget big motor Camaro. It's cheap as hell, $36,000 roughly for the base model one. It'll do a 4-second flat 0 to 60. Really 4.3 with rollout if you shift it perfect and launch it perfect. 12.3 quarter mile. The only thing that beats it in this list is the M3, and it's half the price of the M3, almost exactly. So it's a bargain. Yes, this car came out in 2016, so it's 6 years out of date at this point, and it's still very relevant. On this list, it is the best horsepower per dollar. It is the second best quarter mile, and it still has 4 seats. The rear headroom's terrible, visibility's terrible. Road noise is pretty bad on the SS. If you get the 1LT, it's got skinnier tires, so it's manageable. But the torque is unmatched across this whole list, except if you get a Scat Pack Charger or Challenger. But we'll get to that car later. The Camaro is probably the one I should buy. Only problem with it is I've already had a Camaro, but I haven't had a manual yet. It's not a particularly good manual transmission, though. Mustang Bullitt, it's got more horsepower than the Camaro, but somehow manages to be significantly slower and also has significantly worse skid pad performance and worse braking. And it's a Ford. So probably not going to get a Mustang because, Ford screwed me really bad on my F-150. The Mustang does look better to me. It's got better visibility, a little bit less passenger volume, but the back seats are actually more practical. We get to the Miata here. It's the slowest thing on the list. It is the cheapest thing on the list. It's the smallest thing on the list. So let's look at width. If you look at width, the Miata is the narrowest by far. But the difference between a Miata and a pretty wide M3, it's like 6 inches. So yeah, that's a big difference, but not that big of a deal. But if you look at passenger volume, a Miata and a Porsche are terrible. 50 square feet, or cubic feet. I believe that's cubic feet. If you look at everything else, it's around 80, except for the Z, it's 52. So the Z, the Miata, and the Porsche are tiny as heck inside. The GR86 manages to have a lot more space in a similar size footprint car at a similar price range. So the GR86 is by far way more practical than the Z or the Porsche or the Miata. So if I was going to get one of these little cheap cars, it'd be the GR86, just for the extra practicality. One cool thing about the Miata is that you can run it on regular gas. It doesn't require premium. Everything else in this list requires premium. You can run a Camaro on regular. It won't hurt it. Just going to lose some power. It's a very slight amount of power lost in efficiency. Porsche. So if I was going to get a Porsche, it'd probably be the GTS or the GT4. Performance numbers, it's fast. It's not amazing compared to the price. Horsepower per dollar is terrible. $82,000 base model car. You'll never find one that price. They're always more than that. Very tiny inside. Seats don't recline. No rear seats. Again, really, really small interior volume. So I'd love to get a Porsche one day, but just not really practical enough. If you get a 911, you do get the little tiny back seats, but the engine hangs so far out of the back. I know they perform great, but I like the principle of a 718 better than a 911. But again, probably not going to spend $8,000 on a toy. It's going to be a second vehicle. So, and then we got the Scat Pack Challenger on here. I'd never buy one. It's really obvious. It has the worst skid pad rating here by far. It's the heaviest on the list by far. It's an ancient, outdated chassis. The interior is absolutely pathetic. And its performance numbers aren't even that great. It's got the most horsepower on this list, I believe, at 485. And it's significantly slower than the Porsche, the Mustang, the Camaro, the CT4, or the M3. Yes, it is cheap at $40,000, but the Camaro beats it in every single way, except for the Camaro has less room in the back seat. Every other way, Camaro's better. So definitely not getting this. So the ones I'd actually consider on this list is getting another Camaro, getting a GR86, getting a CT4 Blackwing, or that's it. I can't get an M3 because my friend already has one, and that'd be boring. So I got something to race the M3 with. But the M3, as like a whole package, definitely the best car on this list. Yes, it might be a little overpriced, but if you sit in one of those things, it's amazing. The interior probably won't last forever, and you're going to take a pretty big hit when you sell it. It's an M car, so it holds value pretty good, but buying a new German car and selling it in 3 years because it's falling apart already is an expensive endeavor, but it's worth it. I mean, it's a cool car. If I was going to get an M3, the problem with it is the M3 competition all-wheel drive exists, which has a rear-wheel drive mode and is insane performance. So I don't know if I could pass up that performance capability. So if I got an M3, it'd probably be the competition X-Drive, unfortunately. So, and I want a manual this time around, so maybe that'll be the car after this, is a competition M3. But yeah, so I'm shopping these three cars. There's plenty of Camaros on the lot. You can still find a 2022 under $40,000 brand new on the lot pretty easily. GR86s, there's a wait list, and CT4 Blackwings, there's a wait list. So I'm not a very patient man, so you can probably figure out what I'm going to end up with. Had the Camaro before. Major complaint was road noise. Back seat comfort. There's just not enough headroom for an adult at all. And what was my other complaint? Oh, and the seats don't recline very far. Those are my three complaints. But again, all stuff I can live with considering it's as fast as everything else on this list, and it's cheap as hell. And it has my favorite type of power. There's no turbo. It's just lobs of 6.2 liter V8 torque from a very low RPM, and it's the easiest car in the world to slide because you've always got torque on demand. It's very predictable, very linear power delivery. So probably going to get one of these guys, either an LT1 or an SS, or maybe a 2SS like I had last time with the ventilated seats. But I'd be fine with an LT1. I think an LT1 will have less road noise. It doesn't have the staggered tire setup, so you can run a pretty mild all-season on there and have a quiet, comfortable ride. One problem with all of these cars is that manual transmissions are geared too low in their highest gear, so they don't get super great highway mileage, and they all take premium except for the Miata, so it's not going to be like a real money-saving thing. Everyone's going to say, why didn't you put the Golf R and the Civic Type R on this list? Because those are cool cars. They are cool cars, but I'm just over front-wheel drive, had too many of them, and they're just not as good, despite everyone trying to make them better. Much rather have a rear-wheel drive car. Aston Martin Vantage is on this list. I believe you can still get it with a manual, but I wasn't able to find any performance specs for it, and I think it's like $130,000. And honestly, if I was going to buy a car that much, I would get the best driving car of all time, which is a Porsche. So, yep. I'm sure no one's going to watch this, but I figured I would just make the video anyways because I did the research, so I might as well make like 15 cents by posting the video and getting like 100 views on it. Thanks, guys.